North Korea is one of the most isolated countries in the world, and as such, not much is publicly disclosed about it. To learn more about this nation, economists have taken a rather interesting approach, looking at nightlight data. By analyzing the concentration of light in North Korea, economists have found that the average North Korean has a standard of living that would cost $1,400 a year in America. Luminosity also shows the volatility of the North Korean economy. Luminosity fell by 40% from 2013 to 2015, indicating a 12% reduction in GDP, and then rose once again in 2016. This fluctuation is most likely due to the droughts and sanctions the country has faced throughout history, which have previously caused massive famines. To deal with food shortages and the inability of the government to supply for them, North Koreans have come up with their own solution: markets. North Korea is a totalitarian socialist nation, meaning the government has absolute control over the people and the country. However, despite claiming it has a socialist economy which the government has full control over, North Korea actually has hundreds of these government-sanctioned private markets, which contradict the very idea of socialism that the government claims to follow. These markets first began as small, necessary smuggling businesses during the arduous March famine in the 1990s. The government's public distribution system collapsed, causing an estimated 1 million people to die of starvation. As a result, the people of North Korea were forced to turn to these gray markets. Recognizing its inability to provide for its own people, the North Korean government had to turn a blind eye to these small smuggling activities. However, as the famine diminished, these markets soon grew past their origins, often selling items that were illegal or unavailable to North Korea. Initially, these markets were condemned by Kim Jong-un's regime, Kim himself stating that the markets were eating away at the socialism of our own style, and a birthplace of all sorts of non-socialist practices. After all, having private markets directly contradicts socialist principles. However, North Korea's economy was struggling, especially due to heavy sanctions placed on it by the rest of the world, and markets were responsible for sustaining this already struggling economy. For instance, the monthly average wage for a government official in North Korea is around 3,000 North Korean won. However, the average monthly household income from 2013 to 2016 was estimated to be 400,000 North Korean won. This gap comes from the sources outside government jobs, in most cases unofficial economic activities in these markets, or bribes offered by those taking part in market activities. Shutting down these markets would be a huge hit on the North Korean economy. Kim was caught between keeping a firm control over the country and expanding the North Korean economy. Despite his wanting to sustain a socialist state, the reality was that the North Korean economy did have markets, and most of the economic growth during his rule was because of the expansion of these markets, a stark contrast to socialist policies which are negatively correlated to growth. The 2009 currency reform is proof that North Korean citizens do not want the government to interfere with their money. Citizens were given 1 week to convert their currency at a rate of 100 to 1. This itself was not an issue, but on top of this conversion, the North Korean government also imposed heavy limitations on how much money could be converted, an amount which would not buy much more than just a 50-kilo sack of rice. The response was an instant backlash towards the government, as life savings were made worthless. The government was forced to offer compensatory wage increases, which sometimes amounted to 100 increase in income, essentially the old wage rates in the new currency. The result was a huge hit to private markets, and many were forced to close as they could not afford to continue their businesses. It is speculated that this was the intent of the currency reform, to land a blow on the illegal markets and tighten the government's control on the people at all at the expense of the poor. However, the immense backlash the regime received was enough to show them that people did not want the government interfering with their private affairs. From 2012 to 2018, there was very little market repression, and many informal markets became somewhat official. In 2013, Kim Jong-un stated that economic welfare was as important as military progression. In 2014, Kim legitimized those who made money through markets through a series of reforms. But despite traders paying a fee to the government for keeping a market similar to a tax, the markets were not institutionalized or protected by laws. China, another socialist nation, institutionalized economic reform in 1970 and revised its constitution to allow private economic activity in 1982. claiming that it was complementary to a socialist economy. North Korea has made no such change, despite experiencing marketization more widespread than any other socialist nation. This is because North Korea is a one-party totalitarian state, where the one party and one ruler want to stay in power. A market economy would lessen Kim Jong-un's regime's power over the people. Marketization increases trust among people, increasing the potential of anti-government organizations. Kim's regime is reliant on loyalty and obedience to the one dictator, so marketization leads to the weakening of the regime's control. Marketization would also lead to the informal privatization of productive assets previously held by state-owned enterprises, or SOEs, as businessmen bribe officials and SOE managers, allowing them to own previously state-owned assets. This shifts the economy structure from state ownership to private ownership, lessening the government's control over the economy. So, after giving his people a taste of marketization, Kim revoked overseas trading rights and once again established control over export prices in 2018. Those attempting to import or export goods are now punished as smugglers, despite the Kim regime previously looking away from such activity. Kim also used COVID as an opportunity to tighten his control, once again introducing a state-run system to sell food. In 2019, over 23,000 square meters of new market space were built in North Korea, but by 2021, there were only 630 new square meters of space, showing a clear correlation between COVID and the markets in the economy. Despite Kim's renewed efforts to crack down on marketization, it may already be irreversible. Now that North Koreans know what a market economy is like, they will not want to return to the fully socialist economy that the government wants. However, between Kim's attempts to mitigate trade and COVID-19, the economy has deteriorated and many are once again beginning to starve as food prices fluctuate. Thank you for watching this video.